everyone, and welcome back to Down Below. My name is Steve.
I'm Ian.
Together we're designing a diceless, narrative-focused, non-random role-playing game focusing on a dystopian utopia or utopian dystopia in the not-too-distant future.
Yep, so you've got a question for me about the system today, I think.
Indeed. What we've been doing in the last episode, and what we'll continue to do for a few more, is we've been delving a lot into the what of Down Below. We're kind of going to delve into the why of Down Below. Seeing as the mechanics are fairly simple, we're going to talk about the philosophy behind it to give people a better sense of what we're actually going for. So the question I'm posing this time is very simple. Mechanically, it's currently set up so that one success equals one success, no matter where it comes from. A rocket launcher is functionally equivalent to a handgun in that each of them can allow you to succeed when they're the right tool for the job. Most other games do not do that. Most other games have various different things scale, whether it's dice pools, difficulty classes, or weapon damage. Philosophically, why have we subscribed to a position of equality across the board?
Well, in the system that ended up shaking out of the design process here, I decided that for the level of abstraction that we're doing, which is very, very abstract, it would be appropriate to just have mechanically everything have parity across the board. Mechanical parity is something that is a sort of bugbear of RPG design because it's really difficult to achieve that and still make a game that represents a story or things in world that makes sense.
For instance, how do you mechanically equate a wizard with a fighter?
Right, and my look at that has always been, this doesn't make sense. A wizard should outclass a fighter, except in very narrow circumstances. Look at Glenn Cook's The Black Company books for really great examples of why. But in the Down Below game system, we have decided on this: a success means something in the narrative rather than meaning something in the world.
Yep.
And because it puts everything on the narrative, basically what I'm saying is I'm making the system step back and say it is literally just the minimum required to establish a working agreement between everybody of when you get to say, I shot you, no you didn't. Because that is where game systems come in the playing pretend, the grown-up slightly version of Cowboys and Indians that we all play here.
Functionally speaking, the only reason for rules to exist is twofold. The first is to enforce or inform a certain element of the setting. Exalted would not feel the same without its essence pools, for instance. But the second is to provide a common ground for people who have never met each other and have no sense of narrative equivalence to say, functionally, I shot you, no you didn't. Solve disputes.
In the context of role-playing, when I was in community college, so about 15 years ago right now,
how time flies,
I took an improv acting course specifically to understand better what was going on with role-playing, because I wanted to be better at it. It was a hobby I really enjoyed, and I had space in my program for some elective courses just for the hell of it to learn things I wanted to learn. And that's a really good thing. What I learned from this improv acting course about the rules of role-playing was that the most basic rules in role-playing come down to the improv acting rules. Improv acting has the one rule that you never contradict something that somebody else has introduced to the scene. So if somebody else says they have a hat, you don't say they don't have a hat. You can take their hat and throw it off stage if you don't want them to have a hat.
You can pretend their hat is imaginary, but you have to acknowledge the hat in some way.
You have to acknowledge things that other people have brought into the scene and act like they're there, and you should really act like they're really there to the extent that the other person does in a straight-up improv acting sense.
Right.
Rules of role-playing games fundamentally build on the rules of improv acting in the sense that you are acting out a story together. Now, this is something that role-playing games come into by the side door, because the history of role-playing games goes back to war games, which weren't developed out of acting.
And there's a lot to be said on this subject, which we'll probably revisit in a little bit, but I keep saying this and it remains true. Role-playing does not actually mean that you need to be improv community theater. All it means is you need to clearly and concisely state your character's informed actions.
Right. But the fact that it became about portraying characters in situations rather than being about fighting battles that you happen to have hero characters in, that brought it into this improv situation. And because the game we are making is one that is basically about portraying story and portraying characters in a story, I decided that a mechanic that puts all of the what matters in the hands of the GM, because as we've discussed before, the GM can decide that is only barely appropriate and that will let you succeed at doing this but not everything you wanted.
And can even decide that is totally inappropriate for the task at hand.
You can't even use that trait here. Or the GM can say, okay, that is an appropriate trait. You can use that to succeed, and we move on to the next challenge.
Yep.
It puts all of that power in the hands of the GM, and all of the power for what are the important traits. Is it guns? Is it cars? Is it my ability to sing really well? Into the hands of the players. So it really empowers everybody who's playing the game to decide what matters in their story, and enforces that improv acting rule of, we've put this on the table, the GM's put this challenge on the table, the players have put these traits on the table, and they have to acknowledge what each other have brought to the table.
And there we have it.
So next time we'll have another question from me to Steve.
Yep.
Thanks for falling through the cracks.
And in the future, if you have more questions you'd like us to answer, or more information you'd like about either the system or the setting, please let us know in the comments below or on our Patreon page.
We'll be working on updating our Patreon goals and subscription reward levels to best reflect what we're doing with the campaign right now. Thank you to our subscribers, and we'll see you tomorrow.